Welcome to FUNC YOU UP, the podcast that gives you the best of functional medicine, nutrition, and wellness in 8 minutes or less.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to FUNC YOU UP. This is Michelle Miller, clinical nutritionist.
And this is Diana Orchant, functional medicine registered dietitian.
Hope everybody's doing well out there. We have a cool episode today. This is talking about specifically the Low Fodmap Diet. We get a lot of questions about this. What is it? Why is it so difficult to follow? When should I use it? How long should I use it for? So we're going to dive into all those questions today and hopefully provide you with some good answers. So start us out, Diana. Just explain, just FODMAP, it's an acronym, and just kind of break down what that even means and why this diet's labeled that.
So we hear low FODMAP and we think, well, what does FODMAPs even mean? So to break it down, FODMAPs are fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. That's what FODMAP. Yeah, so that's just what FODMAP stands for. And so low, the idea of a low FODMAP diet is kind of decreasing the amount of these foods that we're going to be eating. So to break down each letter, fermentable means that the food is broken down or fermented by bacteria in the large bowel, or will be, right? And then oligosaccharides means like smaller amounts of sugar. So these molecules are made up of individual sugars joined together in a chain. And what you may have heard them as are actually common prebiotics. They are made up of galacto-oligosaccharides and fructo-oligosaccharides, which are also very important prebiotics to feed the good bacteria in our gut. So we'll go into this, but we don't want to cut them out for too long term because they're super important. But that includes foods like onions and garlic and tons of vegetables and grains. And then we have the D of FODMAPs, disaccharides. And di means two. And this is just a double sugar molecule. So it's specific for FODMAPs, it's the lactose that are in dairy foods like cow's milk, cheese, things like that. And then the M is monosaccharides, which mono means single, and this is just a single sugar molecule. And in this case, it's fructose, or really excess fructose, which is why you'll see fruits allowed, but limited because you don't want to have too much fructose or it will affect your GI tract. And then the last one is polyols. So these are sugar alcohols, so most commonly sorbitol and mannitol. And sugar alcohols are found in a lot of chewing gums, or they're added to a lot of processed foods, but they're also found naturally in some fruits and vegetables.
Brilliant, yes. And so, this acronym of FODMAP, it's when all of these short chain carbohydrates of various forms are found in food. And the issue is if foods have a higher content of one or several of these components that Diana just walked through, any of the low FODMAP letters, or the FODMAP letters, if it has any combination or high levels of these, something can start to happen. So Diana, walk me through when you're having these, why high levels of these could be an issue.
Yeah, so they can just trigger a variety of GI symptoms. So in general, these foods can be very difficult for many people to digest. And so what that means is, FODMAPs pass straight into the colon and they can ferment and create gas, bloating, and or pain. So eliminating these items can usually decrease the symptoms.
Well, and it is good to say, these are often more of an issue if there's some sort of underlying condition going on. So the average person with a really robust, healthy, balanced gut might not even really notice that if they had a high FODMAP diet the whole day, they may or may not really notice. It might not be that big of a deal for them. But if you have an underlying bacterial imbalance, or you have SIBO, which is bacteria that's made its way up into the small intestine where it's not supposed to be, or if you have an inflammatory digestive issue, you're going to be much more sensitive to high levels of these in the diet.
Right. So this is not a diet it's really a therapeutic diet. It's not a diet that we just give to anybody. It's really, there's something going on. While we figure out what it is, let's alleviate the symptoms immediately. Yes. And so usually going on this stricter low FODMAP diet can alleviate a lot of these symptoms while we go through and kind of investigate what's going on.
Exactly. So low FODMAP diets just mean you're eating foods that are naturally lower in all of those different, oligosaccharides, all of the polysaccharides that Diana walked through that are with that acronym of FODMAP. It's foods that are naturally lower in all of those short chain carbohydrates. So Diana, talk a little bit about why this is only intended to be a short-term diet.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize this, and they might feel really great on it. And kind of once you've been doing it for a while, although it is complex, people sometimes feel like, oh, I should just continue this because I feel better on it. But it's really only meant to be short term to improve signs and symptoms of functional GI issues. But it decreases a lot of good bacteria. So bifidobacteria is a huge one that increases, in our gut. And a lot of these FODMAP foods actually have a ton of gut healing and anti-inflammatory properties that we want to be consuming every day.
Eating the rainbow, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of these foods are very important for feeding our good gut bacteria. And so eliminating them completely actually can cause more harm than good.
Yes. So let's use an example. If, we have a client that comes into our office, they're complaining of digestive symptoms. Maybe they have, and it could be a wide range of issues. It could be acid reflux, frequent belching or hiccups. It could be this feeling like food isn't really getting digested. It's kind of just settling in the upper stomach, or like a lot of bloating or excessive gas, even just like alternating or constipation, diarrhea, anything within this GI symptom range of GI symptoms. Usually our model of care is that we're going to do some deep dive testing, get a stool test, maybe do a breath test, get a sense of what's going on in there. But those test results could take 2 weeks to get back. So in the meantime, maybe we want to just bring someone some relief. This is a really easy diet. Well, it's not easy, but it's a good diet. It's a good idea to jump into to just help kind of calm down that environment and remove some of the foods that would be higher in FODMAP so that you're not fermenting and things aren't producing gas when you're already kind of in a generally upset GI system environment.
Yeah, and although it's really useful, while we're trying to figure out what's going on, some people come in with a diagnosis of SIBO, or they're told that they have IBS, which listen to episode 48, we'll dive right into that and debunk that for you, or inflammatory bowel disease. And a lot of times a low FODMAP diet is totally indicated for these diagnoses as we, clear out the bad bacteria and go through the treatment process, but it's never a full long-term solution.
So when we think about low FODMAP, and with my ulcerative colitis, I think about low FODMAP as a spectrum, and I'll always explain this to our clients. So there's low FODMAP and there's high FODMAP, and there's a bunch of things that are in the middle. So, avocado, for instance, if you could actually, we'll drop some resources later on in the episode, but you could actually get a resource like an app where you look up a food and it could tell you exactly which specific letters in the acronym of FODMAP are high in each specific food, or maybe several of them are. And so you kind of find that all of these foods are going to find their way on the spectrum from low FODMAP to high FODMAP. Now there's going to be things like animal protein that, those are going to be super low FODMAP. There's nothing in it that is, going to be fermenting in that way with the carbohydrate. But there's going to be foods that are kind of hitting several of those FODMAP acronyms. So you wouldn't want to have those in high amounts. And so the goal is, especially with IBD, I kind of live in the middle realm. I kind of know that there's certain things like garlic and onions that I really can't have ever, even in small amounts. They're just too much of a trigger for me. But things like broccoli or some cruciferous vegetables, especially if I cook those, I can have those in small amounts throughout the week, no problem at all. Another patient maybe not be able to tolerate, Brussels sprouts, but could have a little bit of cooked cauliflower. And so you really have to start to individualize it. We don't recommend a low FODMAP for longer than 6 weeks because you run the risk of missing out on some of the benefits of those foods, but also understanding that it doesn't mean you can start just eating, cloves of garlic overnight. It's that these might just be an issue for you in general. They are harder foods to break down and digest because of this fermenting process. So, understanding that not everyone's low FODMAP diet is, perfect diet is going to be perfect for someone else. Some level of personalization has to take place.
Right. And it's interesting because unlike a lot of other kind of elimination diets or therapeutic diets, it's very, very patient specific, mainly because someone can have, I mean, you might be able to not tolerate garlic and onion, whereas someone else can't tolerate bananas and they learn that, right?
Yes.
So it totally
Great
depends.
example.
But what's also really interesting is that you might learn that you can tolerate, okay, a fourth a cup of, only cooked onion. And so eliminating those foods for a certain period of time and then slowly adding back different servings, different ways of preparing, you'll actually learn a lot, because cooking in general breaks down foods. Having only a certain amount, you might hit your threshold, right? Like we only have certain amount of, I would say, like fructose transporters. So maybe you're kind of reaching that threshold of what fructose you can tolerate in, that cup of watermelon, and then you're done. So it's an interesting process, and that's why I think it's very hard, especially to take on by yourself. We usually recommend like working with a practitioner or someone who's well educated in this diet, because it can get really complicated.
You're reminding me of a patient we saw. You'll know who I'm talking about in a moment, but he came in, he thought he was allergic to garlic, and we did testing, we did breath testing, stool testing. We found out he had small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. We started him on a low Fodmap diet. We cleared out the bacteria over a few months, and he was like, "You're not going to believe it, I'm not allergic to garlic anymore. Like I had a little bit last night, like it was just a little bit of garlic powder. It wasn't anything crazy, but I was fine." So it's really like, no, you weren't actually allergic to garlic. You just had SIBO and you were reacting to anything that was higher FODMAP, and now you can just handle a little bit. But I mean, for someone who loves cooking and who loves using different spices, I mean, this was a dream to just be able to incorporate a little bit of garlic. So it's not a death wish, right? This is just, while we're healing, we're going to just calm everything down, be really delicate with a low FODMAP diet. And then let's start, once everything's calmed down and rebuilding in the gut and strong again, let's start testing things out and kind of see how far we can push the envelope.
Yeah, and there's so many great resources out there. So,
and you need them. This is not an intuitive diet.
Exactly. Like you cannot go to the grocery store and just be like, oh, I remember what's low FODMAP. I mean, no one has it memorized. It's not like, oh, this is processed. This is not like, can't have, this fruit only. It's so counterintuitive. So there's an amazing app by Monash University, which is truly our favorite. It's so well done. They also have a ton of resources online. And then there's also resources for, if you're like, I can't even cook, I need like a week or 2 or 3 of a company delivering low FODMAP foods to me, which, Michelle, I know you've had a lot of experience with.
Yeah, in 2017, I put myself on a completely low FODMAP diet for 6 weeks because I really felt I needed to educate myself more on it. And I thought if I could live the experience, I could coach a client on it better. And so I first started out, I was purchasing Epicured Meals, which is a low FODMAP food delivery service. And, I was doing that for 1 meal a day just to kind of help give me a little bit of a break so that I only had to worry about breakfast and dinner. And I would print out, they just have some great resources in general. I would print out a shopping list. And actually I might've done this. There's so many good resources out there, but I just got a low FODMAP shopping list. I took it to the grocery store, and like, at this point I'm a clinical nutritionist with, almost 10 years of clinical experience. And I'm like in the grocery store with the paper of like, I can't have this. I can have, potatoes, or not sweet potatoes, but this type, like it was crazy.
Not too much.
Right. So, it was a learning curve even for me. And so we really push these resources with our clients because you need some support when you're doing this, or my fear is people just end up not eating, and that's not the goal either.
Okay, well, we hope that we've clarified some of your questions about low FODMAP, maybe even helped you understand how you go about doing it, but definitely recommend working with someone if you do want to go about it. But if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us via our Instagram at Physio Logic NYC, or you can reach us via email at funkyouup@physiologicnyc.com.
Absolutely. This was just a good overview, a good introduction to low FODMAP today. But if you have any good recipes, good resources, we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out. And if you find that this episode would be really helpful for a friend or a loved one, please share it with us and help us get the word out about functional nutrition. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to Funk You Up. Be sure to like, review, and subscribe for more daily tips on living well.